Welcome back, everybody. Thanks so much for being here again. We are now joined by another distinguished panel of current med students. And unfortunately, we only have a little bit of time, so I don't know how many questions we're going to be able to get to them. But specifically, all of these wonderful people not only are currently in medical school, but took a gap year. And so that's what we're going to spend the next half hour talking about, is how they decided to make that choice, and then what they did with themselves, and what they got out of that experience. But first, let me ask each of our distinguished panelists, please would you introduce yourself? Where are you in school?
Hi, I'm Jake. I am a third-year medical student at Northeast Ohio Medical University in Richardson, Ohio.
Welcome, Jake.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessica. I'm a first-year medical student in the MD-PhD program at the University of Maryland in Baltimore.
Thanks for being here, Jessica.
Hi, my name is Maeve. I am an M2 student at Cooper, and that's in Camden, New Jersey.
Thanks, Maeve.
And I'm Reese. I am a third-year medical student at the Texas College of Osteopathic Medicine in Fort Worth, Texas.
I hope you're staying warm, Reese.
The power was out a few days, but we're good now.
Okay, thank goodness. Thank goodness. So with each of you made a somewhat scary choice of taking a gap year. And I'm sure that that's something that many of our attendees are weighing. So first, I want to ask, so how did you go about making that choice? And Jake, if you would start again, what were the factors that led you to that decision?
Right. So I think the main decision was that there was just so much more life to live outside of academics than I wanted to do, that if I would have went straight into medical school, I feel like I had so many things on my bucket list I wanted to do. I would not have been able to do really any of them. And I took actually 2 years off, 2 gap years, and I got to do some of those things. And it was an amazing decision.
Maeve, similar, that there were things you had to do?
I actually wasn't sure that I wanted to go to medical school, and I knew that that was a really long route, and I wanted to make sure that I closed one door off before I made that commitment.
Well, that makes sense. Sure. Jessica, Reese, what inspired you to take a gap?
I was similar to Maeve, so I also wanted to reaffirm my decision because the MD-PhD program is a very long time dedicated program. So I just wanted to make sure that this was the correct path for me, and to also explore a little bit, as what Jake said, to go beyond the academia and see what else there is.
Similar, medicine is a huge commitment. It's a lot of years of training out of college. So at the end of my freshman year, I had just finished physiology and loved it. And at that point, I said, I really want to go into medical school, but I actually took a leave of absence and went on a 2-year mission. Had an amazing time, came back, and then I said, yes, I absolutely want to do medicine. And I didn't get into chemistry. and that was a big mistake, and that ended up costing me a gap year. Made the most of it, loved the gap year. It was something that I was kind of forced into by ignorance, but I ended up having a great experience. I went and worked full-time in a food manufacturing plant. They specialized in probiotics and other dietary supplements. And I said, yeah, medicine absolutely is the thing for me. And I wanted out very quickly, but had a good experience doing that.
Well, Reese, I got you off mic. Tell us more. So how did you spend your couple years in between?
Yeah, so the couple years was at the end of my freshman year. I went, and it was a 2-year mission trip for my church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So we go around and we try and build up the church in different, all around the world. So I actually got assigned, and this is random, but you won't believe where I went, but I got assigned to Fiji for 2 years. And it was just an amazing experience. Saw a lot of things. I wasn't there for medical reasons, but came away and saw a lot of suffering, and again, it just reaffirmed to me I wanted to go into medicine, and came back, hit the ground running. I got my CNA right away and started working as a CNA and a skilled nursing facility, and just took off from there.
Well, and then you had to spend another year, right?
Yeah, so then at that point I had 3 more years in my degree, and before you can take the MCAT, you need 3 years of chemistry. If you're quick about it, you can do it in, I believe it's 2, you can do it at the end of your 2nd year of chemistry with general chemistry, organic chemistry, and then biochem. I missed that and I didn't take general chemistry that first semester of my 2nd year, and just built up this flow that impeded my ability to take the MCAT. So at the end of that, there was nothing I could do but take the MCAT as I graduated. And so I ultimately decided not to pursue graduate training, not to go get post-baccalaureate classes. And I said, medical school is expensive. I need some money. Right. I had a daughter by the time we started medical school, and was grateful for the money that helped with that, and I was grateful for the time with family. So yeah, so mine is different. I wish I had been doing fun bucket list stuff. It was part ignorance, and then just doing some other fun service oriented things.
Well, I mean, you did go to Fiji.
It was awesome. Fiji was, I'm not complaining.
All right, well, let's spread the conversation out a little bit. It looks like we'll have time to do a little more chatting about all these things. But Jessica, would you talk to us next? So how did you end up spending your gap year?
Yeah, for my first, I took 2 gap years as well. So my first gap year I spent at the NIH in the National Cancer Institute, where I worked full time as a fellow, took some classes for fun at the NIH, and did research, which I loved, with another MD, PhD, PI. So had a lot of fun with that. And then one day, I was applying to medical school and I wanted to see what else there was. So I actually went into consulting for these large pharmaceutical companies at Accenture in Philadelphia. So that was my second gap year. I was working full time, earned some money, and then got into the MD PhD program. And here I am now.
And here you are on this panel. That was great. Jake, tell us about your bucket list. What did you have to check off in order to feel comfortable to go to medical school?
So that fall, I graduated in May from undergrad, and then that fall I left for Peru to do 4 months working in volunteer work in an education institute that essentially was a school that helped people in extreme poverty in the mountains of Peru. And I got to live in that area in the Andes Mountains, and essentially go to that school every day, teach, meet people from all over the world who are coming to help with that school as well, and really connect with different cultures and a different language. And I did that for 4 months, and it was one of the hardest things I did, but it was also one of the most impactful. And I knew I wanted to improve my Spanish skills. I'd been to Peru once as an exchange student in undergrad, and that was an amazing amazing opportunity that I knew I wasn't done with. So I did that. And then 1 month after returning to the States, I embarked on my goal of through hiking the Appalachian Trail. So I got to do that for 4 months and 3 days, and hike from Georgia up through Maine, backpacked. And that's probably my favorite life event I've ever went through. And I'm sure if you talk to any through hiker, they'll probably say the same thing. It was difficult. You walk through rain, you walk through snow. It's a crazy journey, but it's such a different side of life that you can't do that during medical school. You can't, honestly, like I did a project on it too. Doing that as a physician, taking 5 months off is almost unheard of. It's possible, but it's very difficult. Licensing, family, finances, all those things. And that was just an opportunity for me.
4 months and 3 days, but who's counting?
Exactly. It's a bragging point, but
and there is a correlation causation thing there, right? Like, is it the people who make it through that say that it was one of the most worthwhile experiences, and the people who didn't think it was worthwhile, they quit? Or anyway, wait. Maeve, what did you end up doing with your time off?
So right after I graduated, I had been doing research throughout undergrad, and I got a position at UPMC. I went to school at Pitt, and I was able to kind of close out my research and see if that was something that I was interested in. Turns out it was not. Research was not meant for me. But I got a paper published, so that was great. And like I said before, it was another door that I could close. And then I also wanted to try, I had a couple of family members who were in the medical device sales industry. And I wanted to give that a shot because I'd heard really great things. They love their jobs. And I love interacting with people. And I thought, well, I like medicine, I like science, and I like talking to people. So maybe it's perfect. And that was a lot shorter road than medical school. So I gave that a shot. I worked in that job for a year. I did have a lot of fun, but also realized by working with a lot of doctors that I wanted to be a doctor. So I had been applying because, as you all know, it takes a while to apply. You kind of have to get all of your ducks in a row the year before. So I did apply beforehand just to see if I would even get in. And I did end up getting in, and the experience that I had working in the OR with those doctors really reaffirmed my decision to go to medical school.
Great. So a broad variety of experiences. One of the questions that came in from a student was, were any of you already accepted when you decided to take a gap year? Nope. And so let's actually talk about that directly. How did this affect your application? How did this affect where you applied, how you applied, you're thinking about med school?
Yeah, so for myself, I had graduated from undergrad. I think it was the week or two after the medical school application cycle opened. So I graduated, I took some time and just went full bore into my MCAT study prep, and then I took it on, I think it was May 16th, 2017. At that point, the application cycle for all state or for Texas had been open for 3 weeks. And by the time I received my MCAT scores, it was like August, which is very late. My recommendation for all pre-med students is you want to apply very soon. You want to be the top of the stack when you're putting in your application. So got my scores back in August, and then I just sent it to all of the programs. I'd already filled out my application. I had pre-entered all of the essays and sent it out and crossed my fingers. Was grateful. I got interviews, flew out to some places, and it wasn't until about October, November that I had a few places, and I knew that medical school was going to happen for me, and that just was a huge weight off of my shoulders. You know, it felt awesome to have that experience. So, but I didn't know until about like 6 months into my gap year that medical school was going to happen, and that was 6 months of applying and that whole process.
For me, I actually was ready to apply my senior year of undergrad. So I actually had everything written out. I had all my recommendations in, everything was prepped, and then I had my life crisis is what I called it. But I had my life crisis and I said I need to double check that this was for me. So I spent a whole year not thinking about the applications that I wrote, and then I was ready by that time. So then I sent it in. I had everything pre-written, so it was very not stressful for me. I had everything ready, and it was just a smooth process that came through for that.
And then I think that it helped I think it made my applications a lot more difficult, or excuse me, my interviews, because I had to finagle how I would get like request off for work and fly out to some of the interviews. So that was really difficult. But I will say that working in an environment where I wasn't comfortable, which I mean, is anyone really comfortable in an interview, definitely made me much more confident when it came to answering those questions. And I would just recommend doing something where like you'll be a little bit like outside of your comfort zone so that it will prepare you for some of those hard-hitting questions during your interview.
Yeah, and I was completing a lot of the aspects of the application when I was on the trail. And I prepared a lot of the personal statement and such beforehand, but yeah, a lot of that was done kind of around my life events.
Did that come up during your interviews? Did that come up? Were you asked about how you were spending your time and so do you feel like your experiences in your gap year strengthened your application and gave you better answers for why you wanted to be a doctor? And
100%.
A lot of nodding heads.
Yeah, definitely.
So that is one of the advantages, right? Is that you actually get some real world experience. And Reese, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. For me, it was huge. It was a great insight while I was working at this manufacturing plant. The owners, it was kind of a ma and pop story, but they started really small and they grew their manufacturing plant to about 40 million a year. So it was doing pretty well. And I came on. It was just passing out my resume at a job fair because I knew I wanted to make some money during my gap year and try and fight off the student loans as long as I could, and got a job there. And they got acquired halfway through the year, and it was so enlightening for me just to see what it's like to be an employee in a situation where the investors, the shareholders, they change hands, and everything at our work changed, and we started to see layoffs, and we started to see the staff started to thin out, and the way that we were processing things and our protocols, it all changed. And we liked the new leadership at some times, and other times it was really a difficult thing. And I think that's just invaluable because school is like this great bubble that just keeps you from all of those different things. But I'm still hearing people talk about things like, oh yeah, my practice was acquired, and I say, oh wow, I have a little bit of insight of some of those stressors, and so I think it's been a great thing for me. It helps provide some insights into working full time and some of those stresses. Also just made me really grateful to be a student and have like 6 weeks off for the summer. You have some real perks as a student that you just don't realize until you've worked a full-time job, and they're like, yeah, you get 2 weeks off, go ahead and choose wisely. Christmas is included, Christmas Eve is not. Right. Good luck.
Right. Well, and that's the thing that Dr. Dale mentioned at the start of the day too, right? Is that sometimes school can feel like a big conveyor belt where you just stay on the track, right? And so the gap year gives you a chance to improvise and explore what's not on the conveyor belt. What else is out there?
Absolutely.
In important ways. You brought up, Reese, and several students have asked about finances, right? How do you finance a gap year? How did a gap year? Several of you worked, right? How was that? Was that an explicit part of your calculus? Is I want to make some money?
Yeah, for me, I'm very financially oriented. I very much try to be financially literate and to understand those. I attended a public university for undergrad, large part because of I had a scholarship that was great, and I looked at the nickels and dimes and said, I think this will still work for medical school, because I was thinking perhaps medical school at the start of college. So and then all the way through, and so when I hit the end and saw I'd have a gap year, I said, well, shoot, this isn't going to be, I'm not going to make as much money in the gap year as I would working another year at the end of my career as a physician. And that's a real consideration you have to think when you're taking on a gap year. You know, is this $40,000 now going to be worth whatever a doctor makes the last year of their career? I didn't have any choice, so I said, well, shoot, I'd rather have $40,000 or whatever it was. But yeah, we made a lot of our decisions based off of that. We lived in a low income area. It was about 30 minutes from my work, and we rented for just about free. It had carpeted floors in it, so that was kind of gross and stuff. But we were just making like kings on the rent, and my wife had been working too, and so between the two of us, we put down a lot of money. And if I wasn't excited about medical school, I realized in hindsight that I was on the path of financial independence, and things, you know, things were great. We were putting money away, but we had this vision of medical school. And so for us, working was a great opportunity. We were making like kings off of our living costs, and we put together a lot of money that made a big difference in the first year or two of medical school. And then we came to we looked at the most affordable medical schools we could, and so there's lots of different ways, but yeah, that's how we did it.
The money's real, and I think so. It's wise to take the calculus of a year now versus a year at the end of my career, but also you want to make sure that before you spend a lot of money on medical school, that it's that you've seen what else is out there, right?
Right.
That's a sensible investment as well. So Jessica, you also worked. Was that in part motivated by student loan debt, or?
So I'm very fortunate where the MD PhD program pays for my medical school and gives me a stipend to live off of. So I did not have to worry about finances as much, but because it is such a long road when you can be earning money 4 years after you go through loans, I did want to save up more. So I spent a lot of time planning retirement funds and putting in investments into stocks and making sure that I'm ready for retirement, because it's never too early to talk about that, especially when medical school is such a long journey ahead.
Maeve, did you have thoughts about how you financed your gap year? And
Yeah, honestly, mine was less, it definitely did, I did take into account the finances, but because I was exploring another career option, it wasn't necessarily in order to make medical school more fiscally reasonable, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to see if there was another career that, you know, made me happy and where I could make a living. So I definitely did consider how much money I was making that year, but it was more so just a part of the career decision and less so how it would impact my decision to become a doctor later on.
sure. Jake, while you were on the Appalachian Trail, were you staying in touch with your recommenders, or had you already gotten all that stuff worked out in advance?
Right. So I prepped them and said, hey, I'm probably going to ask for a letter of recommendation when the time comes, because the applications opened when I was on trail. I actually stopped at the library and sent the final request for them to input those. But I prepped them and said, hey, I'd like a letter. And then when the time came, I said, here's the link. Can you please submit these?
Other folks do the same thing, or did you actually have to get back in touch afterwards?
I ended up staying in touch with all of my letter of recommendation peoples. I think it's a great habit too. You always should network wherever you are, whatever stage of career you are. Always stay in touch with those people who you're asking those letters of recommendation. And I still talk to them once in a while. Go ahead and send them an email, and we'd go ahead and check on each other via video chat. So I would highly recommend, even if it's just one letter, they're going to make a huge difference in your career, no matter where you are.
So, yeah, so I would echo what Jessica just said. I'm not as good as she was. I can't remember all the people who wrote letters of recommendation, but I do have one who I considered a real mentor for me, and led me through. She was the principal investigator while I did a research project. We've remained in touch. We're good friends, and not often, but sometimes we'll get together still when I'm in town, and so she's one that I have stayed in touch with, and it's been a great thing, and it just feels natural to just share with them. They're in education because they want to help and they want to see students succeed, and so if you have that mindset and you just continue to keep them updated, I think that they really enjoy that, and um, they become your cheerleaders as you go on too, and so I've found that with that one mentor who also helped write a letter for me.
I feel similarly. I also I wasn't as good as Jessica about keeping up with them, but I've kept up with my PI as well, and then someone who I shadowed. So I would definitely say bug them ahead of time, and you kind of have to read the person. But if there's someone who's super busy, I mean, you're just another email, so they're not gonna mind if you're politely nagging them, and give them a deadline that's before whatever the application deadline is, so that you have that. And then yeah, reach out to them, because I mean it seems like they feel really proud, and they're part of how you got into medical school ultimately, so they definitely want to hear, even if it's just a quick email, or like sometimes I write, like people like to get mail, I feel like, so that's always a good little surprise.
With that, if I can just add one thing, I did remember one of my letter writers, he forgot to submit it for a couple weeks, and so I bring this up, but the way that the program is set up, AMCAS and ACOMAS and the other ones, you'll receive an email confirmation when your letter writer uploads it, just like Maeve just said, and I saw Jake nodding his head, but don't be scared to follow up with your letter writer and say, I haven't seen this go through. Can you please look into it? I did that with one of the letter writers who I now remember, and he was very apologetic and did it right away, and it ended up working out fine for me.
Again, what Dr. Dale said about being the leader, right? You are the leader of your application, and you got to make sure that your team is doing the things that they said they would do. Well, so we only have 5 minutes left, and we've got a whole bunch of people that really want to be where you are right now. I just want to open this up to y'all generally. What do aspiring pre-meds to know about med school, about getting in, about the whole kit and caboodle? I'll name names. Who's ready?
Sorry, Jed, you froze for a moment. But yeah, so my general advice that I'd say is make yourself unique. What I did was very atypical. It was people see it as risky, but I did exactly what I wanted to do, and I owned that, and I made that got brought up in my interview. There's no certain formula. If you follow the formula that like everybody says, like, oh, you have to do this and this and this, that's just what typically everyone does, which is good. But at the same time, like medical school, unfortunately, is very competitive, and you have to stand out in some way to be remembered. That's what I did during my gap years. Don't be afraid to do it. And another thing, watch your mental health. I took 2 years off too because I was feeling burnout. It did wonders. And the people I see, there's a 6-year program, 2 years undergrads, 4-year med school program that my school's affiliated with. And those people are so burnt out, majority of them, because it's just classes, academics, keep going. So take time for yourself, take time for your mental health. You got to make that a priority. Otherwise, you're going to burn out.
I want to echo what Jake said exactly. Please prioritize your mental health before, during. It's such a long road because you have medical school, then you have residency, then you have internship, then you have become a doctor. There's never a time where you'll ever be done in this career because it is so harsh. So make sure you do prioritize that mental health. I think my other advice is to network, because I don't think that you can network enough with the people, the faculty, with us students. So please reach out to us if you have any other questions, or if you just want to talk or chat with us. And I think my last advice is to have fun with the whole process, because we're going through this journey of becoming doctors, and we all have good principles with us. And I think sometimes I do forget the bigger picture, the longer road that's ahead.
So the best advice I had when I was applying for medical school is to keep a journal, a detailed journal of how many hours I'm spending on different activities and what I'm learning from those. Because that's when you go into an interview or you're writing up an application, they are choosing you for the medical school based off of that encounter and what is written on your application. And so the better that you can present the things that have made you decide to go into medicine, the better the opportunity that you'll have, and you'll give yourself those different boosts and different things. I love what Jessica and Jake have said. For me, the best thing, and I figured this out in medical school, but you have to have an identity outside of medical student. You are a person who goes to medical school, not a medical student who also eats and exercises. And I think a big part of that is to find some hobbies now in undergrad that can sustain you for the rest of your life, and look for ways to incorporate those. It's just a good practice.
Organized about focusing on your process and self-reflective, right? That's important.
And then I would just say be confident in what you do. I mean, they want someone who's going to come in and absolutely knows that this is the path that's for them. And then I would also say find, like how everyone else has said, find what keeps you grounded now, because what you can give all of yourself to medicine. I mean, it will take everything that you give it. So make sure that you know what powers you, because they also want to see what you're passionate about and let that shine. And remember that when you're in med school. So I love that idea about journaling. I mean, keep track of the things that you love so that it doesn't consume those things.
Great. And remember that self-care is work, right? That is important work. You gotta doctor yourself, right? What would your doctor tell you to do? Sleep, eat, exercise, right? See your people. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.